Yo, what's up? It's me, E. From our last video, I talked about the first reason why we should recommend MTG as a hobby. In this video, I'll talk about the second reason, MTG financial literacy. Let's get it. Welcome back to the channel, guys. For those of you who are new, I am E and I create MTG content and budget streaming content. So, let's talk magic money. But before I start, I want to preface this by saying that I created this video with the intention of talking to the newcomers. Those of us who don't know what MTG is about, how it established its collective value, and why it is a fun, interactive, and life lesson generating game. So with this in mind, I took the liberty to simplify the explanation and even the historic timelines of how things came to be, so that we can talk about the meaty part first. And for those of you who want to talk to me in depth about these things, drop me a comment or visit me on my stream. Schedules are right there. So, with the disclaimer out of the way, let's start. With any market, MTG collectible cards derive its value with two simplistic market principles: supply and demand. To start, let's talk supply. Simply put, the supply of each card is determined by how many cards Wizards of the Coast or WotC prints. How many of those printed are determined by its rarity, and rarity are grades given to a card by WotC R&D, or we'll call them developers, for its perceived power level. Power level, simplified, is the ability of that card to win you the game. Who are the developers? The developers are the persons who designed the cards themselves. They are composed of a group of creative individuals. Some of them were previous professional players. So most of the time, and I do mean most, the designer's perceived power level is accurate. The rarity grade are as follows. You have the common, uncommon, rare, and mythic rare. Nowadays, these are directly printed at the right-hand side of each card by a color code. Black for common, silver for uncommon, gold for rare, and bronze or rose gold for mythic rare. These cards are created by R&D in batches, or what we call a set. They do this so that a central theme can be established in that card group. A set today would typically contain 200 to 300 unique cards. These cards are then distributed to the primary market, meaning from WotC to the consumers, through packs. A pack contains 15 cards, random cards. However, the rarity content is predetermined. For each pack, you will always get 11 commons, 3 uncommons, 1 rare, and for every 8 packs, one of those has a possibility to have 1 mythic rare that replaces your rare slot. So, to reiterate, math rounded up, for every 1 uncommon printed, there will be 4 common cards. For every rare printed, there are 3 uncommon cards. And for every mythic rare printed, there are 8 printed rare cards. So with this principle, we can already see a difference in the value because of how scarce the card is. Putting things into perspective, a common Llanowar Visionary costs 22 cents from the time we're filming. An uncommon Garruk Uprising costs 80 cents. A rare Azusa costs $8. And a mythic rare Ugin costs $26. Now that we have the basics of supply, let's slide over to demand. Demand simply is the amount of money a buyer is willing to pay for a card. As we know, the cards are distributed to the primary market in a random format through packs. Because it is random, a player will not have all the desired cards for their decks or collections. Hence, there is a need to trade for these cards in the secondary market, meaning peer-to-peer, or not from WotC themselves. The trade can be in a form of cards or cash equivalent value. The demand is driven by the collective market desirability of the card. The desirability of the card is determined by the actual power level of the cards. Now, if you remember, I mentioned perceived power level by R&D as it relates to its rarity, as against now, which is actual power level of the cards. The difference lies in the amount of time and scope of card testing. When R&D develops the cards, they can only do so in a vacuum, which would entail secrecy and an impending deadline. This means that only a handful of people can test the cards with limited time. So the intention of why the cards was made may not be applicable in the real MTG competitive scene. To visualize, take Chromatic Orrery as an example. When it was released back on July 3, 2020, it started at $30. This price was reflective of the perceived power level. However, after release, where it was made available to the players, which would collectively play and test the cards extensively, this means a lot more people are testing the cards, exchanging ideas, and really understanding how these cards interact in the real MTG scene. There may be some factors that were not seen during product development that was discovered after release. As you can see in the graph, slowly, the value of this card dwindled down to $10 at the end of July 2020 and stayed at that level. This market correction is reflective of the actual power level of the card being discovered. So from this standpoint, actual power level of the cards creates desirability. Desirability then drives demand, which ultimately breaks the supply symmetry. Simple. To visualize even further, let's compare two mythic rares. I previously mentioned Chromatic Orrery at $10, while Ugin is at $26. This is because the actual power level of Ugin is way higher than Chromatic Orrery, as evident by the top 4 standard decks at the time of filming, of which 3 out of 4 are using Ugin, while we see 0 representation of Chromatic Orrery within this space. To sum up, there are a plethora of factors that affect the market value of each card. However, all of those can arguably be attributed to these two simple factors: supply, demand. As a bonus round, there are top 3 factors you should bear in mind when trading or acquiring cards. Number 1, card condition. Since we are dealing with physical products, the price are set to an assumption where the product has 0 physical damage. Obviously, if there are dents, scratches, this will degrade the value of the card. So keep that in mind when trading. Number 2, regional supply value. Because the cards are distributed around the world randomly via packs, there is a possibility that one location will have a surplus or shortage for a specific card. This is especially true for locations with a smaller MTG community footprint and the supply pool is not enough to cover the random variance. Keep this in mind when trading. Number 3, time-dependent demand. WotC enforces tournaments by format. One of the most pushed formats is called Standard. Standard is the fastest rotating format where the cards that can only be played in standard tournaments are within the current 7 to 10 sets, give or take. So as new sets are released, the oldest sets become obsolete and fall into a different format category. With that, it has a different ecosphere altogether, but that's a different topic. Some of the cards' desirability are format dependent. Therefore, if a card's actual power level is only effective in a specific format, say it's only powerful in standard, once it falls out of the format, the power level recalibrates and decreases. Example, Teferi, Hero of Dominaria. During its release in June 2018, it was priced as $18 to $20. It peaked at January 2019 at $55 a copy. However, as the format slowly rotated out of standard, it also slowly dwindled down and now is sitting at $28. So as you could see, it peaked at Jan 2019 when it was at its height of use within the format. Demand rose and dwindled when it was about to rotate out. This is a time-dependent demand phenomenon. Alright, those are the high-level financial concepts surrounding the game of Magic. If you initially were intrigued by the gameplay, but loved the trading and collecting potential within this game, by all means, join our community. Traders, collectors are one of the cornerstones that makes this community great. Speaking of community, in my next video, let's talk about the third and last reason why we should recommend MTG as a hobby, and that's the community. But until then, this is E, and as always, stay safe.